Hey everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Portrait of Pirates Monkey D. Luffy JF Special Edition from the series One Piece. Now, this is quite an old figure. I don't know exactly when it came out, but it is part of the older lineup of Portrait of Pirates where the figures weren't as sort of show accurate or manga accurate as they could have been because the technology just wasn't really there and it was hard to bring a 2D character to life, especially a character as animated as Luffy. And this is a sort of repaint and remold of an even older figure where it was the Paramount War design of Luffy, and this is the JF special version where it's a little bit more in line with his earlier outfit where it's a red jacket and blue pants, but it does also come with an alternate top half which is to imitate his look during the Amazon Lily arc. So I grabbed this one because there aren't a lot of pre-time skip characters out there, and there aren't a lot of good-looking ones, and this one looked okay enough, especially because the JF special one had a sort of redone face that made it a little bit more in line with how Luffy should look. And while it's not perfect by any means, it's not bad at all either. I would very much like them to do a Playback Memories figure for Luffy, but this is what we've got. And there are plenty of pre-time skip Luffys, and it really depends on your preference. But today we're going to be looking at this Portrait of Pirates. Now, taking a quick look at the figure box, you can see a big window in the front, all of the different Portrait of Pirate branding, because there's so much branding, and a bunch of promo images on the back. Unfortunately, these promo images are kind of misleading, because they do show the interchangeable parts of the figure, which are absolutely there, but they do show the Amazon Lily outfit for Luffy, which is a blue top and red pants. This figure does not come with the red pants, it only comes with the blue top. So I think you're expected to have the previous release, which was the Paramount War outfit, which was a yellow top and red pants, and you're meant to swap the parts with that. So to get the most out of this figure, you're expected to buy two of essentially the same figure. That's not going to happen. So when I do have a look at the Amazon Lily parts, it will be blue on blue, and that's just how it is. But taking a look at the figure outside of the box, you can see it's not too bad. There are some strange sculpting choices, and it doesn't quite read as Luffy pre-time skip, but it reads as Luffy enough that I think it's fine. Like, I think he seems a little bit too long in the body. You could just say he's stretching. His muscles don't look as good. Like, he's very, very scrawny, I feel. And I think that's fine for his legs and arms, but his chest with the open jacket just looks a little bit funny. And it does look even funnier when you're taking the body out and reassembling parts and all that. But it is what it is. It's just fine. I think the sculpt itself is okay. It is outdated, but I think it's just okay. But as an action pose, I think it works quite well. It's a nice little ready pose for Luffy, and generally does read as him. I do like the head sculpt where his hair's down. I think that looks really good for him. And the sort of serious looking to the side face reads as Luffy quite clearly. Now, this figure has all of the essential Luffy details, so the red jacket, obviously, the straw hat. He's got the scar on his face, on all of his head sculpts. The straw hat doesn't have the 3 scars that Buggy left on it, which is a little bit of a shame because from the few figures that I've looked at so far from One Piece, it seems like a pretty consistent thing that they always keep those scars in. But it is what it is. His blue pants, I think the sculpt is fine, but I think the painting is a bit off because the cuffs at the very end aren't white, really. That's sort of the blue of the pants has just made its way onto the hair, which is a bit weird. His sandals look good. The base is fine. I don't really mind the Portrait of Pirates bases so much, the big sort of octagons. I don't really mind those. It's just that sometimes the colouring choices are a bit off. I think the colouring choice of blue is a bit weird here, especially with Luffy's blue pants. I don't think it works that well, but you can remove him from the base and he stands perfectly fine. So it is a nice freeform figure. Now, one of the weird choices of this is he's got a ball joint on his head, and I've noticed that with a lot of the older POPs, they have ball joints on their head, and you can just sort of pose it around and change the look and feel of the figure, which is kind of cool, but it can also make the figure look pretty average depending on if you put it in the wrong spot. And it also fills me with a bit of dread whenever I try and remove the head, because I like having a slot that you pull up and down, and it feels very natural, whereas the ball joint, it feels like you're going to break something. Especially on this, it feels like the ball joint is a bit too tight, but it gets the job done well enough. And with the alternate faces, so the serious looking to the side face, which I think is the best face, I think that reads the most as Luffy, and I think it works the best with his head down. But there's also one of the older faces, which is his sort of like cheeky smile, and it's like a sort of almost sinister smirk to the side, and his forehead looks a little bit too high. It's not my favorite look, to be honest. And then he's got a sort of more battle-ready smile, which I think reads more as Luffy, and I think it works quite well. So his sort of aggressive face and his like wider smile work quite well. But taking off the head and replacing it with the hat head, the straw hat seems a bit too big for his head, or at least depending on how you rest it, it looks a bit too big. I'm not really a big fan of it. His cheeky smile look, I still don't like it. It doesn't look the best on this head sculpt. The serious looking to the side one does look a bit better, but again, the hat feels a bit too big. And then his sort of wider smile with serious eyes, I think it's a real big mismatch, which is a bit of a shame. I just don't think that the hat resting on his head really suits this mold that much. And I think that's something that they have worked on now. It's just very hard to get the proportions right with a wearable hat. And like I said in my Trafalgar Law review, I would prefer if it's just a separate head sculpt of them wearing the hat and them not wearing the hat, not really giving you options. I think it's better if it's not left up to you to put it on, because then they have to mold it in certain ways as an option part, and I just don't think it works that well. But if you swap out the Amazon Lily body, you can swap in a different one of Luffy's arms. I mean, I think it works on the other body as well, but I put it on the Lily body because he's got the armband. But it's got him ready to do like a Gum Gum pistol, or another single-armed Gum Gum attack where he's got one arm rested on the other and his fist outstretched. And I think it looks nice. I do also like that the jacket is buttoned up, and it gives a completely different feel to the figure. And I like that quite a bit. You can also just swap out the arms in the exact same pose as the main body with the red jacket. It's just that this arm now has the armband that he had during the Amazon Lily arc. And so you've got some pretty good options of the figure, and all of the parts are very well painted and look pretty good. They look the part well enough, but there is just a feeling of it being dated, and the figure just feels old and hard to deal with. My one was brand new, but it does just feel old, and that just comes with the territory of it being, I don't know, probably a decade old, this figure, if not more. But it still holds up pretty well, and some of the alternate faces do read really, really well as Luffy and do hold up quite well. It's just that some of the one of the faces doesn't look quite right. It does feel quite old, and the wearable hat accessory doesn't quite sit right with me. But if you avoid all that, you can get a really, really solid Luffy figure out of this, and it's quite good. I do still want them to do a Playback Memories figure of Luffy, but we'll see what happens. There is the Portrait of Pirates figure of Ace and Luffy is definitely in pre-time skip attire, and I think that might be the next best thing. But as it stands now, you could do a lot worse, and for the time that this released in, it's still a pretty good figure, and it probably would have been fantastic back then too. But that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you all next time.